I know, but I'm nervous. I haven't done this in a while. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel, and it has been a while. First off, if you hear any crackling from my mic, I'm sorry. It does that sometimes. Don't know how to fix it. If you know how to fix it, please let me know. So I took a little bit of a break. I don't think you can call that a break. I kind of just stopped doing booktube for a while. I think my last video was in May, and it was me and my roommate ranking Teen Wolf couples. I kind of just got busy with work, and I didn't really carve out time for this, and I kind of regret it because I have missed doing booktube, and I'm glad to be back. Also, in case you haven't noticed, my channel, my Instagram, all my things have gone through a little bit of a change. I was formerly Mads' Reading, and now I am Literary Maddie. I have had my Mads' Reading username for about 4 or 5 years. It started on Twitter, and I thought it was time to start going by my real name because Mads isn't my real name. It's not even a nickname for me. My name, Maddie, and Mads don't match because of the spelling. So I thought it was time to go by my real name, and I am happier for it. So yeah, welcome to my channel. I'm Maddie, and today I'm going to be going through all of the 97 books that I read in 2024. This is the most books that I've ever read in a given year, so I'm so proud of myself. You can tell that I really had no life, but it led to a good result, so I can't complain. I want to dive into my stats of the year first because I almost said stats are fun. Book stats are fun. Real statistics are not, and this is coming from someone who's taken a college statistics class. But let's get through my book stats. Let's see. So I read 97 books. I almost got to 100. I would have gotten to 102 if it wasn't for this nasty cold that kicked my butt at the end of the year. I did not get much reading done. I was sick and rotting on the couch. That's fine. We're going to ignore how close I was to 100 and didn't reach it. My average time to finish a book was 5 days. I feel like I became kind of a quicker reader this year, so I'm very pleased with that. Most of the books that I read were from 300 to 500 pages, so very medium length. My top genres were fantasy, young adult, romance, and horror. I had never read a horror book before this year, and you will see why later. Horror is one of my top. It will make sense later, I promise. 66% of the books I read were physical, and 43% were digital, an all-time high for me because I got a Kindle. Actually, I got this Kindle around July, but I really started reading digital books this year because I was accepted as a Penguin Teen influencer, and most of the arcs came in digitally. So I dived into NetGalley for the first time this year and read a lot of digital books. At first, I mainly read them on my iPad or my phone. Then I got my Kindle, and then I started reading them on my Kindle. And I also discovered Libby, which is a very, very magical app that gets me access to digital books. So this is my lovely Kindle. I love her. My parents got her for me for my birthday, and I'm obsessed. I love her. My average rating was about 3.68 stars, more or less, because sometimes I change my ratings on one app and then I don't do it on another app, and this information's from Storygraph, so it's about 3.68, which I think is pretty good. I think I definitely changed or more developed my rating system this year, so I really utilized the 1 to 5 stars. So I think that means some of the books that I read were lower rated because I actually started utilizing lower ratings to reflect my feelings. So I think that's why it's a bit lower than previous years. Okay, now for the fun part, we're going to dive into all the books that I read this year. I'm not going to go in depth to all of them because I don't have time for that. you don't have time for that, and we don't want to be here for that long. So I'm mainly gonna share what I read, what I rated it, maybe share a little something about my feelings, and then move on. So we're gonna start out with January, my first read of the year to my last read of the year. And first, I read The Titan's Curse by Rick Riordan. End of 23, beginning of 24, I was going through my major Rick Riordan reread. So I started the year with my reread of The Titan's Curse. Love it. I didn't give it a rating because the Percy Jackson books are all just so nostalgic for me that I can't rate that. Because they would all be 5 stars because of how happy they make me feel, because it's Percy Jackson. So I didn't rate any of them. The Titan's Curse, I love them. And then, of course, I read The Battle of the Labyrinth and The Last Olympian. I think I read this one in like a day. Love these books. These are actually the books that got me into reading. So rereading them this year, it was really fun. And Rick Riordan actually ended up being my top author of the year, and you will see how many of his books that I've read this year. And then, of course, I had to continue, and so I reread The Lost Hero, also not rated. This is one of my least favorite in the series, but I liked this one a little bit more this time around because I actually started to appreciate Jason and his character, which I previously hated. So, a lot of growth and change for me this year, truly. So those are all read physical. Then I read Girls Who Burn by M.K. Pagano. I think that's how you pronounce their last name. And I read this one digitally, but then Pigmentine gratefully sent me a physical copy as well. I gave this one a 3-star. Some parts of the mystery were really good, but I didn't love it. I kind of didn't connect to the characters at all, and so that held me back a lot. Honestly, looking back, it might have been a 2.5 star. And then I read The Son of Neptune by Rick Riordan. Iconic. I also realized that Frank's kind of annoying. And then I read Heart Still Beating by Brooke Archer, a 2.5 star. I read this one digitally. It was an ARC. And I feel really bad. But for a book that's supposed to be a sapphic love story in the zombie apocalypse, I was very disappointed. Those are the books that I read in January, and then February was my worst month of the year. I only read 3 books. They were all very scattered. It took me forever to read all of them. I feel like February is always kind of a rough month for reading for me. I read These Deadly Prophecies by Andrea Tang. I gave this one, I did not write it down. I think this one was a 4-star. I really liked this. It was actually so good. It was very Knives Out. It gave me those vibes, but with magic. So it was very cool. And then I read The Mark of Athena by Rick Riordan. No rating again, but I do love this one. You see them all come together. Very cute. I actually started this one in January. That's how long it took me to read this one. I read a whole book in between it. We're not going to talk about that though. And then I read Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. I gave this one a 3-star. This one was very good. Very much gave me high fantasy, kind of D&D vibes. It really mainly focuses on everybody in the group coming together and realizing the stakes of the issue. I think I'm probably gonna like the other ones in the series a little bit more. This one was good, but it was very slow, very world building, but I do appreciate that. This one also took me forever to read. Also, I actually started Powerless by Lauren Roberts in February. I did end up finishing it in March, but I literally read it. February was a rough month, and I think I was kind of in a bit of a reading slump looking back on it. But I had started Powerless and then didn't touch it for weeks. But that was February. And then I started out March with The Simmons House Kills by Megan Dwyer. If you see me looking down in this corner, it's because my computer's right here and I have everything listed out. I came prepared. Rated this one a 1.5 stars. And I feel so bad because I'd been following the author on Twitter forever, and she so kindly sent me a physical ARC to read, but I just didn't like it, and I feel so bad. Everything in this kind of just felt forced, and I didn't love it. I feel so bad. I could cry. And then I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This was my first 5-star of the year. I know. Applause. I love it. I read this one for a reading vlog forever ago, and it was perfect. Roman and Iris are everything. I love them. It's just such a beautiful love story. What? I could gush about them forever. I'm not kidding. I love them. I need a drink of my coffee. Need a little coffee break. I did end up reading Ruthless Vows, but that wasn't until later because I have a problem with reading books back to back. And then I read A Winter's Promise by Christelle Davos. This is the first book in the Mirror Visitor series, and this one was recommended to me by Alyssa. I read it in the same reading vlog of Divine Rivals. This book was so good. I rated it 4 stars. Such a unique concept, and it felt like a Studio Ghibli movie through and through. I just loved that, and it's such a good book, and I need to finish the rest of them. But I only own the first one, so that sucks. And then I finally finished Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Why do people like this book? It's so popular. If you are anywhere on social media, on anything book related, you've seen this book. You know what it's about. Why do people like this? It sucked. I hated this book. What did I rate it? 2 stars? I rated this a whopping 1.5 stars. I did not like it. I liked it a little bit at the beginning. I saw the potential. I saw a little bit of chemistry, and then I got annoyed because this book is very forced between the character interactions, and it was the same scenes happening over and over again. Everything in this book, I've seen it before. It was nothing special. I just did not like it. That's all I have to say about that. I could probably go on forever about how much I hate Powerless. But then things looked up after it because then I read Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I annotated this one. It was my first annotation of the year. I rated this one a 5 star. It was perfect. This is such a lovely book, and I need to read more of his books this year, and I'm going to make that a personal goal of mine. That was March, and now we're going to dive into April. I read House of Hades by Rick Riordan. This is actually my favorite in the series because your girl loves angst. If you know, you know. I love it. I feel horrible for saying that, actually, but I do. I read The Breakup List by Adib Karam. This one was a 4.5 star. It was very cute. I think what was really holding me back was the ending. I'm kind of very mad about the ending. I have a hard time when a character struggles with someone and this person is just very toxic to them, not good for them, and they realize that by the end of the book, but they forgive them a little bit too easily. That's what I had a problem with in this one. This one was also a arc from Penguin Teen that they had sent me physically. So, thank you, Penguin Teen. And then I finished off my reread of the series. I read The Blood of Olympus. I have nothing else to say. It's a great conclusion to the series. And then I read The Encanto's Daughter by Melissa de la Cruz, and I rated this a 1 star. It was my least favorite read of the year. It was a digital arc from Penguin Teen. I just did not like anything about this book. But also, I believe Melissa de la Cruz is the same author who wrote the Descendants books. If you remember that, like, The Isle of the Lost and all that. But one thing about me is that I love the Descendants. And as a kid, I remember buying and reading Isle of the Lost and obsessing over it. And so I kind of had more hopes for Melissa de la Cruz writing books today. But I will not be reading any of her other books because I just did not like Encanto's Daughter. But after that, I had to make myself feel better, so I read something queer, and I read Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. I really enjoyed this one. I think this one was about 3.5, 4 stars. I think people comparing it to Red, White, and Royal Blue actually does it a disservice because that's why I read it, and really the only similarity is that one of them's famous, and they're both British. Like, that's the only thing that carries over. So, I think this one should stand on its own, but it was very good. The characters were all just so messy, and I kind of love that. My last read of April was Chalice of the Gods by Rick Riordan. This one is the continuation of the Percy Jackson series, and I'm not gonna lie, this book is completely unnecessary. It does not need to exist, but I did give it a 4 star. It's Percy Jackson, and honestly, I love how Percy, Annabeth, and Grover all come together to do a quest together. Like, the band is back. Like, that's the vibe this one was giving. How can I not love it when it's literally a Percy Jackson book? Okay, moving on to May, I read One Last Breath by Ginny Myers Sane, and I rated that one a 2.5 star. This one was a digital arc. This one was promising, and this is one of the books that I would love it one moment and hate it the next. There are aspects of their relationship that I really hate, which may be surprising because it is sapphic, but I just had a couple of problems, and I'm not going to dive into that super deep, but I had a lot of mixed feelings. And then I read The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This one I did read physically, but I got it from the library, so I don't have it. I kind of wish I read this before Throne of Glass. I think it would have helped me like Throne of Glass a little bit better. I did rate this one 3.5 stars. It was good. I liked seeing the little bits. Like, it would hint at the prince and the captain of the guard, and you're just like, I know something you don't know. That's the vibes I was getting when Selena mentioned them, and I kind of loved that. Then it was my annual reread of Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. If you know me, you know I love this book with my entire being, and I reread it once a year. I actually annotated it, and I had a blast. First off, you can't really see. You feel like you can't see the tabs, but they're all very cute and blue, which I love, especially because it matches the movie cover. And yes, I did buy myself the movie cover. This means that I have 4 copies of Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I will accumulate more. That's inevitable. I had such a fun time annotating it, and it is full of annotations. But that was the second and last book that I annotated for the year. And then I read The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan, and I rated this one a solid 4 star. I read it physically, and this one was a reread, but I hadn't reread it since I first read it when it first came out. When it first came out, I actually didn't keep up with them. I'm very bad at keeping up with books as they come out, so this was the only one in the series that I'd read, and it was time that I caught up. So, of course, I had to reread this one because I had reread all the other ones, and it had been a while, so I needed a refresher. I'll talk about my feelings about the series as a whole when I get to the last one. And then I read The Darkness Rises by Stacey Stokes, and this one was a digital arc, and I rated it a 4.5 stars. Looking back, it's probably more of a 4 star. It was still very good. Very, very dark. It surrounds the theme of school shootings, and this girl can see when people are gonna die because, like, she sees a cloud over their head. She has a lot of problems surrounding that and this event. There's also this mystery that goes along with it, and I just think it was written really well, and it's kind of a unique concept. So I definitely recommend this one. Make sure you look up trigger warnings because it's a very dark book. Then I started a new era because I read Red Rising by Pierce Brown. My coworker had been nagging me to read this, and I had actually gotten my dad to read this series. I kind of blindly recommended it to him because I just figured he'd like it, but he did end up liking it, and he wanted me to read it too. I had a very fun time discussing it with my coworker and my dad, and it's just so fun. I love talking to people about books, so I am really happy that I read this. Honestly, looking back on it, I haven't finished the series yet, but I have read most of the books. And looking back, I do think Red Rising is my favorite in the book series. The rest of it just doesn't match the vibes of this one. It's a very heavy sci-fi, like this book is sci-fi, and I enjoyed my time. I'm very glad that I read it, and I need to finish the series. A common theme in my life. That was all I read in May, and then moving on to June, I started the month off with Killer Twice by Stacey Lee. This one was a 4 star and a digital arc. This one was very good. I liked the culture. Took place in like 1920s Chinatown in LA, which was a new one for me. And I feel like new in general, like I don't really see books taking place in that setting. So I really liked it. They're solving a mystery and definitely dives into a lot of cultural problems and racism and discriminations. And I just really liked the way that it was told, and I think the author did a great job. And then I read The Dark Prophecy by Rick Riordan. This one was a 3.5 star. I didn't love this one as much as the last one because Leo and Calypso kind of annoyed me as a couple. But we're not going to discuss, we don't need to dive into that. Why did I mark that as an arc? That is not an arc. I did read it digitally. Oh shoot, I mixed some books up. I thought I had it all set up perfectly, and I did not, and that's disappointing. I'm disappointed in myself. And then I read Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. I rated this one 4 star. I believe I rated all the books in this series 4 star. I enjoyed it. I'd say this one mainly surrounds politics, and then the last one surrounds war. So I kind of like that, how that progresses. Great book. No complaints. Love talking about it with my coworker and my dad. And then I read Playing for Keeps by Jennifer Dugan, and that one was a 1.5 star and a digital arc. I think I need to stop reading books by this author. There is one more book of hers that I do want to read, and that is Verona Comics. I've owned that one forever. It looks really cute. I do want to read that one still. But I do think that one is going to be a make or break if I ever read her books again. I read, what was it? Some Girls Do by her, did not like it. I read Playing for Keeps by her, did not like it. Me rating a sapphic book 1.5 stars is just a crime and should never happen. So I am just very disappointed. And honestly, this book just made me mad a lot of the time. I'm not gonna lie. And then I read Morning Star by Pierce Brown. I kind of mentioned it earlier. This one mainly surrounds war, and it was, again, very good. I had something specific to say about this, and then I forgot. So I guess it wasn't that important. Yep, that's all I have to say. And then I read The Burning Maze by Rick Riordan. This one I read digitally, but I didn't have my Kindle yet. I rated this one a 4-star. It was very good. I love the dryads in this one. They're so cute. I did love this book, and it was very sad. If you know, you know why it's sad. But it did hurt me a little bit inside. And kind of a little bit more than I was expecting it to, I'm not gonna lie. And then I read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. If you don't know, I love House in the Cerulean Sea. It's one of my favorite books ever. I just love this book. And this one is also very found family. It's queer. It made me cry. I was crying for the last 30 pages. And TJ Klune just puts something in his books that gets me. And I think that something is just found family. And I just eat it up every single time. Did I say the rating? It was 5-star. In case you couldn't tell. TJ Klune's books, guys. If you haven't hopped on them, do it now. You will thank me later. Okay, those are all the books that I read in June. And now it's time for July. July ended up being my best reading month ever in the history of forever. I would like to thank summer for that. I just had more time to read. And it's kind of funny because I got so much reading in during that month. But this is all I have to show for it physically because most of them are actually digital books because this is when I got my Kindle. You can definitely tell that. Started off the month with Spin of Fate by A.A. Vora, and this one was a 4.5 star. If you take any recommendation from this video out of all 97 books that I read, let it be this one, please. I loved this book. The world was so unique. It was based off of Indian culture. But I think the way that the author did it was just so rich and unique and amazing, and I loved the world. I loved the characters and how they were all unlikable in their own way. I had such a fun time reading it, and my favorite thing about this book is that if I'm correct, then it will be the best thing ever in existence. But I kind of see a very authentic love triangle forming. Okay, love triangle. Here is triangle. And he kind of has a thing for her. Not explicitly, but it's kind of hinted at, and you can kind of see something. And then she kind of has a thing for him. Again, not explicitly, but there's chemistry there. And then he has a thing for him, and that one is much more explicitly said. And I love it so much. And I think that's the best thing ever. If there's gonna be a love triangle, let it be that. Please. I cannot recommend this book enough. I am holding it upside down and backwards. And then I read Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. I did read this one physically. It's huge. It took me forever. Not as long as it did Dark Age, though. And I borrowed this one from a friend who is a king. It was a 4-star, like every other book in the series. This is part of the Red Rising series. Iron Gold takes place 10 years after Morning Star finishes. I liked seeing them 10 years in the future because they're all, married and they have kids. And that's just, so cute to me. Especially seeing Severo as a dad is the best thing ever, because Severo is the definition of Chaos Demon as a character, and just seeing him as a dad, and he still has that same energy, but he's a dad. I just love Severo. Severo's my favorite character in the series, if you can't tell. Darrow made me mad a little bit. He kind of always makes me mad. I kind of hate him, which is funny because he's the main character, but it's fine. And then after that, I actually entered a new era of reading for me. I read a manga for the very first time, and that was My Hero Academia Volume 1, Izuku Midoriya Origin by Kohi Horikoshi. And I loved it. So My Hero Academia was previously my favorite anime ever. I have taken a long while to really dive into anime, but I'm kind of starting to get into it a lot more, especially this last year. And I actually didn't rate any of the manga that I read this year because I don't really know how to rate them. They're so short and I just don't know how to rate them. It doesn't help too that they all just blend together for me. So I think that as I finish a manga series, I'll just like rate the series as a whole and not each individual one. And also, I did struggle for a while to determine if I should count manga towards my reading goal because they are very short. They are graphic novels, so they're even quicker to read. I can read them in one sitting. But I did decide to do it because they're books. I just felt like I should count them. So if you have a problem with that, that sucks because I've long since decided. And then after that, I read Tyrant's Tomb by Rick Riordan. This one was digital. I rated it 4 stars. Very good. This was the one that Reina was in. I love how each book in the series has a character from Heroes of Olympus join the quest. It just makes me happy. Next, I read My Hero Academia Volume 2, Rage, You Damned Nerd. I love the titles. I also read My Hero Academia Volume 3, All Might after that, and both of those were physical. All the manga were physical, and I just get them from my library. And then I read The Tower of Neuro by Rick Riordan, and that one was a 4.5 star, and I believe, if I remember right, I could be wrong, I believe that was the first book I read on my Kindle. Again, a new reading era for me because I'm a Kindle girly now. I love the series as a whole because each book you get to see a different point of Apollo's character development, and it's crazy looking at the first book versus the last book through his character. And I just think that Rick Riordan did an amazing job with his character development. And I think it was very smooth how it happened. A very good series. I'm very glad that I read it. And then I read The Sun and the Star by Rick Riordan digitally. I originally rated this one 5 stars. Looking back on it now, I'm going to rate it a 4 star. I just think that it had a lot more potential and that it could have been told in a better way. I don't know how specifically it could have done that. It's been a little bit since I read it, so I don't really remember how that could have been done. But I, however, did still love the book. I think I rated it a 5 star because it just like meant so much to me. I think that it is beautiful to think about younger readers reading this for the first time and seeing themselves in a book like that, probably for the first time. Like, it shows so much about young queer people who also have mental health problems, and that's very real. Younger audience sometimes start to see themselves as a little bit different, and they start to realize that maybe they do have mental health problems, but because they're so young, it's not really identified and they're not really helped. And so I think it's beautiful to think about like a younger audience reading this book and seeing themselves in media sooner than I think a lot of us got to. And I just wish that younger Maddie could have gotten to read this book. I am very happy for future younger audiences who get to read books like these. So I think that also added into my rating a little bit. After that, I read Looking for Alaska by John Green, and I think this one originally was a 4.5. I think more 4. This one was digital, and it was just very good. This was the first time I ever read a John Green book. I really did enjoy it. It felt very coming of age. It kind of reminded me of Perks of Being a Wallflower. There's something about a book that feels real. You understand these characters. They feel a little unlikable because real people are unlikable. It just like it feels real situations and real enough to make you a little bit uncomfortable, and I just really appreciate that. So I do need to read his other books, especially The Fault in Our Stars, because it's so iconic. How can I not read that? Next, I read Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I read that one digitally, and I was so disappointed with this book. And technically, I guess this was my first horror book, which was interesting. I did like that. I guess like when I picked it up, I knew it was like a mystery and historical fiction, and it was like obviously surrounding Jack the Ripper, but I didn't expect it to be as like creepy in the way it described things. But I hated every other aspect. I just like the main characters did not like it. This book was disappointed me. I had a lot more hopes going into it, and it just wasn't it for me. Next, I read The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This is actually my roommate's copy. This is her book. She let me borrow it to read and for this video. And any other picture, if you see on my Instagram with this book, it's hers. I rated this one a 5 star. I love this book. I considered this my first, like, real horror book. The scenes in this book and the descriptions sometimes made me so uncomfortable because of how creepy it was. Like, I'm not gonna, like, dive too deep into it because like you need to experience it, but I had to stop reading sometimes because it like, whoa, It creeped me out. But it wasn't at all what I was expecting going into it. But I just loved reading it. I think everybody should read it. I need to read more of Grady Hendrix's books. I can only imagine how great his other books are. After that, I read Summer Nights and Meteorites by Hannah Reynolds, and this one was a 4.5 star. This was a digital arc. I think I originally rated it 5 star. I don't think it necessarily was, but I did really enjoy it. It wasn't exactly a 5 star feeling, and I think if I question it being a 5 star, then it's not really a 5 star. It's a YA romance, but it was a lot more than a romance, and I really appreciate that. I did really enjoy that one, and I definitely recommend it, and it was a great summer read. And then I read My Hero Academia Volume 4, The Boy Born with Everything, and then after that I read Volume 5, Shoto Todoroki Origin. So that book was perfect because I am a Todoroki girly to the day I die. I love him. That was all the books that I read in July. And then diving into August, I started the month out with The Missing of Claire de Lune by Christelle Davos. This one was a 4.5 star read. I loved it. I read this one digitally. This is the second book to The Mirror Visitor, so the first book was A Winter's Promise. And this one I loved a lot more because the world is already developed. We already see this character in this world, and this one we really kind of get to see her start to shine. Like, it's a very problematic world. And this girl definitely deserves better than the situation she's put in. But you get to see her, actually, grow and deal with these a lot better. And it's really impressive. Also, the romance is starting to develop. And you can tell it's going to be the slowest of slow burns. But I love it. I love it so much. I can't. I really enjoyed this book. And then I read My Hero Academia Volume 6, Struggling. And then I, again, entered a new era of the year. And that's what I call my JJK era. Because I watched Jujutsu Kaisen, which has become my favorite anime ever. I have so many feelings. I read Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 1, Ryumen Sukuna by Gege Akutami. I love the characters, I love the story. This series is why horror ended up being one of my top genres, because it's a horror manga. So, because I started JJK, I actually put a pause on My Hero Academia. I do want to finish the manga. I still need to finish the anime. This will happen, I promise. And then I read Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. That was also digital, and I rated this one a 3.5 stars. Okay, Heir of Fire definitely is my favorite book in that series. I liked Queen of Shadows a little bit less, but I do like seeing the characters start to come together because we've gotten a lot of different POVs, and now they're starting to overlap, and I love it. I love it when that happens, especially in a fantasy series. It's so satisfying. It just hits almost all the time. So I do love that. I think that's my favorite part of Queen of Shadows. I need to continue that series. And then I read Wildfire by Hannah Grace, and I rated this one a 4 star. I'm a Maple Hills series apologist, and I'm not gonna apologize for it. I love these books. I love the chemistry between the characters, and Hannah Grace also refuses to write miscommunication. And I really do love that because it makes the characters and the relationships feel so much more healthy. I love Russ and Rory. Russ is a king. I don't believe that men exist like this in this world, which is unfortunate. I will read anything that Hannah Grace writes at this point. After Wildfire, I read JJK Volume 2, Fearsome Womb. Yes, that is the name of it. And then I read JJK Volume 3, which is Young Fish and Reverse Punishment. And then after that, I read Dark Age by Pierce Brown. This one actually took me the entire month to read, and I'm not kidding. I had a hard time reading it. I still ended up rating it 4 star, probably more of a 3.5 because of how much I struggled with it. But it was still good. It hurt me because one of my favorite characters died, which I don't appreciate. That one I also read physically and borrowed it from my friend again. I felt bad though because I had it for so long and it took me for so long to read it that he would nag on me a lot and I felt really bad. And then I read Beowulf, an unfortunate reread for me. I read it for my literature class. And we read a lot of interesting books for that class, and you'll see. But I don't care about this book. I didn't rate it. It's not a bad story. The way it's told is very boring. I don't really care about it. So I'm not really going to dive into it. So that was August reads, and now we're going to dive into September. I started the month off with JJK Volume 4, I'm Gonna Kill You, and then I read digitally on my lovely Kindle, I read There Is a Door in This Darkness by Kristen Kishore, and that was a 2 star read. It was a digital arc, but it just wasn't good. It was weirdly political. There was a weird magic thing happening that was never explained. I can see what the author was trying to get at, but I don't think it was accomplished, and so I just didn't like it. And then I read JJK Volume 4, Kyoto Sister School Goodwill Event, and then Volume 6, Black Flash. And then I read Where Sleeping Girls Lie, which was a 4-star read for me. This one was very good, and I need to read Ace of Spades by the same author, which I've had on my shelf for about ever. But I did love it. The story in general, the messages it was getting at, I really enjoyed that story. Then after that, I read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It wasn't my favorite classic, but it was very good. I didn't rate it. I didn't really know what to rate it, and I own it, but I did read it digitally. This one was also for my literature class. I'm very glad that I read it. Also, I think that one's considered horror, which probably added to the whole horror being one of my top. And then I read JJK Volume 7, The Origin of Obedience. And then I read Two Sides to Every Murder by Danielle Valentine, which was a 4.5-star read. This one was very short. I read it digitally. It was an ARC. It was very good. I wasn't expecting it to be so good, especially at the beginning. I had mixed feelings at the beginning, but it was so good. I think it would be a great movie, and it was a great mystery, and I really liked it. And then I read JJK Volume 8, Hidden Inventory, and then I read one of my favorite reads of the year, and that was I Fell in Love with Hope by Lancali. This is just like one of the most beautiful books I've ever read, and I kind of wish I annotated it because oh my gosh, it would be full of annotations. It's just so beautifully written. I love the lines and the story of mental health, and the narrator is very interesting in the way that she tells things and her experiences and the way that she exists. That entire book made me cry. I was crying for most of that book. I'm not kidding. You can ask my roommate. There were ugly tears happening. So of course it was a 5-star read. I mean, really, what else do you expect? Okay, and then I read Wolfsong by TJ Klune. This one was a 4.5-star read, not a 5-star. Okay, it's probably more of a 4-star, but it's like, I love the found family that gets built in this one. And I actually didn't read this physically. I read this digitally. I got it on Libby, and for some reason I couldn't send it to my Kindle, so I had to read it on my phone, which was unfortunate. But then my roommate ended up gifting me the entire series for Christmas, so I do have it physically to show you. This book threw me off. The writing is very different than House in Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door. Still whimsy, but it's different, and I don't know how to explain it. And then there's a very interesting character relationship happening that in the beginning feels so wrong. And I'm not going to dive into it. If you've read it, you understand what I'm getting at, I'm sure. It threw me off a lot at the beginning. And I think it took me a while to get over it, but I did end up getting over it. And I did end up loving it, really. And I can't wait to read the rest of them. And then I finished off the month with JJK Volume 9, Premature Death. And that was September. And then October, I started out the month with Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. And this one was a solid 3-star read. I was a little disappointed. I expected to like it a lot more than I did, but I liked it. I don't really know what about it I didn't like. I think the characters I didn't really fully connect to. But it did feel like both a fairy tale and a textbook, which I found interesting. Like, it was a very academic fairy tale, which is very unique, and I kind of liked that. And I do plan on reading the rest of the series. Then I read Dracula by Bram Stoker, and I read this one digitally, and this one was probably like a solid 4-star read. I think this may be my new favorite classic. I loved reading this book, and I can't explain it. I don't know why. I loved the characters. I loved Mina. Mina was a queen. I actually wrote an entire essay on Mina. Mina Harker is a girl boss. I just really loved the book. And this one was for my literature class. My favorite book of that class, and I actually did like all my projects on it. Like, because we could choose, so I just Dracula across the board. I loved that book. And then I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I really hope I pronounced that right. This one was a 5-star read for me. I originally rated it 4.5, and typically when I question a 5-star read, I don't settle on 5-star. But this one just stuck with me. I loved this book. It was so found family, like in a literal sense of found family. there are these 3 orphaned girls, and the main couple take them in pretty much. It's just so cute and cozy and magical and found family, and I love them so much. I just love this book and everything about it. And then I read JJK Volume 10, Evening Festival. After that, I read Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And this one was a solid 1.5 star for me. I did not like it. It had so much promise. And again, this is also a horror book, adding to my horror genre, but I was just expected a lot more from it, and I don't really know what else to say, and I was disappointed. And then I read I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I rated this one 2.5. It wasn't bad. This was for my literature class. I did read this one physically. I don't have the book with me though. My dad has it because I want him to read it. I think he might like it. It was weird. What was that book? I mean, like, it was just weird. I read it, so yeah. And then I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. It was so good. Again, a horror one. I expected it to be a lot more horror than it actually was, but I did love it. And it's very dark academia, which is iconic, and I love it. Leigh Bardugo is a queen, and I will love anything that she writes, pretty much, I think is what the lesson is here. And then I finished off October with JJK Volume 11, The Shibuya Incident, Gate Open. The Shibuya Incident destroys me, but that was October, and now we're going to dive into November. I started off November with another reread of Red, Red, Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I didn't annotate it this time, though. I reread this book twice in 1 year. Take that as you will. I don't know what that means for me or my mental health. And then I read JJK Volume 12, The Shibuya Incident Summon, and then Volume 13, The Shibuya Incident Thunderclap. After that, I read Heist Royale by Kavion Lewis. This one was a physical arc, and I rated it 2.5 stars, maybe 3. I just liked the first one a lot more, and so I kind of had more hope for the second one. And the second one just didn't turn out as good as the first one, which sucks. But it is what it is. It's a duology, so it's over now. And then I read JJK Volume 14, The Shibuya Incident, Right and Wrong, and that was the last JJK book I've read this year. And that one was digital, just because my library literally just doesn't have Volume 14. Don't know why. Okay, and then I read All In and Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and they were both 5-star reads. I love the Natural series. I just cannot recommend that series enough. It's so good. I just love the Naturals. And the Found Family, obviously, here for it. The mystery, amazing. It's a YA Criminal Minds. I can't even describe how amazing it is and how much I love it. It just is perfect. And then I read Everything We Never Said by Sloane Harlow. This one was a physical arc. I say arc. Most of these I read after they had already come out. I had fallen very deeply behind on arcs this year, and I am still trying to catch up. I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. It's okay. I can see what we were trying to get at. I don't think we got there, and that's what I will say about that. Then after that, I read Of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen on my Kindle, and this one was a digital arc. And I rated this one, what did I rate this one? It says 2-star. I'll stick to that. Why was this nominated for a Goodreads Award? I did not like it. The world was very cool, and I think that's why it's a 2-star, is the world was very rich. I think it was built on Chinese culture. I did love the world. Character, couldn't care about. The plot could have focused on different things, and then I would have been happier. I didn't like it. And then I finished off November with Daydream by Hannah Grace. This one was a 4.5 star read, almost a 5-star. I don't know what held me back, but something did. I love Hallie and Henry. They're perfect. This is my favorite book in the series. I can't wait to see what Hannah Grace does next. I'm hoping for a JJ romance. Don't know if we're gonna get it because he's not technically in Maple Hills anymore. That's not the point, and this is not the point of this book. But I love this book. Hallie and Henry are perfect. They had perfect communication. They were just so right for each other, and they understood each other's problems so well. The conflict that arose, they handled it very well, and I just am very pleased with their relationship. Finally, on to December, the final month of the year. I started out the month with We Shall Be Monsters by Tara Sim. This one was a 3.5 stars. I really liked it in the beginning, liked it less near the end. This one was a digital arc, described as a Frankenstein retelling, but I kind of think that takes away from it. I think it should stand on its own, like the girl happens to be able to resurrect people through science. and magic. Very cool. But that's the only Frankenstein bit that happens. So much more happens in this book. So that's my piece on it. I do think it was good. I liked it less near the end. Don't know if I would read the sequel or not, but we'll figure that out when it comes out. And then after that, I read Celestial Monsters by Aiden Thomas. This was a 4.5-star read. I love these books. This is the sequel to The Sunbearer Trials, and it's just a duology, so this is it. But these books are perfect. They are literally a queer Mexican, Percy Jackson. Everybody's so casually queer in this fantasy world, and it makes me so happy. I love these characters. And this one wasn't as good as the first one, maybe because it doesn't have like the trial aspect that's in the first one that I loved so much, but it was still very good. After that, I read Heartstopper Volume 5. Finally, it took me forever to read it, but I did end up reading it. Loved it. 5-star read. It was great. These books make me happy, and I love how they portray a young queer couple. After that, I read On the Bright Side by Anna Sortino. That was a solid 4-star read for me. This one was a digital arc, a YA romance. I loved it. It was a beautiful story about disability. Our main character is deaf, which I loved because you don't get a lot of deaf main characters, but also this last semester I took ASL too, so I think that was like perfect because we do learn about deaf culture, and so I loved getting to see it happen in a more real setting. I did love that. And I also liked trying to, like, you know, when she's signing and it says what she's signing, I tried to like piece it together in my head what she was signing, but I'm not that good at sign language, so I probably didn't do a very good job. But it was a fun aspect to it, I will say that. And then the main male character is developing something, which is obviously turning his life around, and she's very good for him in this time of his life, and I just love them, and I thought it was a wonderful and beautiful book, so definitely recommend that. And then after that, I read, finally, Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. 5-star. Iris and Roman. I can't. Like, I will gush about them endlessly. So I'm not going to because we don't have time for that, but I love them. Then after Ruthless Vows, I read The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore. This one technically is the third book in the series, but it's a standalone book series. Like, you can read it in any order. And I do want to read the rest of them, though, because this was so cute. I liked this a lot more than I thought. I heard a lot of mixed reviews on it. Some people really don't like this book, but it was very cute. And it was my Christmas read of the year. I sat down, had a cozy day, and just read all of it. I rated it a 4-star, and I just loved it, and I can't wait to read the other books because then I will get to see the other characters and their own love stories. After that, I read Cursed Boys and Broken Hearts by Adam Sass, and that one was a 1-star read for me. I just didn't like it in any way whatsoever. It was a digital arc. I didn't like the main characters, didn't like their love story, didn't like anything. And it made me cringe so much. I had a horrible time reading that. And then I read The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber, and that one was a 4-star read. Very good. The ending, crazy. And I need to read the third one so soon. I don't think I liked it as much as the first one, but it was still very good. And I just love the world. Stephanie Garber writes such a fairy tale, and I love her so much for it. And then after that, I read X's and Foes by Amanda Woody. That one was a digital arc. I read it on my Kindle, and that one was a solid 4-star read. I actually really liked it a lot more than I thought I would. And it's about these two ex-best friends who are fighting for the same girl. I liked the main characters more than I thought I would. Like, at the beginning, I was kind of iffy. I thought I wouldn't like them, but I did end up liking them by the end. And I think that they are so good for each other. And I especially liked slowly learning what happened to their friendship throughout the book. Perfect. Then my last read, my 97th book of the year, was This Is Not a Dead Girl Story by Kate Sweeney. That was a 2.5-star. Kind of a disappointing way to end the year. That one was a digital arc. Read it on my Kindle. It was okay. It was a mystery. I understand what it was trying to get at, but I don't think we got there. I just talked about 97 books. I'm very worried about how long this video is going to be, so I really hope you stuck to the end with me. I'm very bad at picking favorites, like a favorite read of the year. So I didn't really have a favorite read, but I would love to know what your favorite read was or what your least favorite read was if we're feeling a little negative. I just would love to know what you read this year. Again, thank you so much if you stuck with me to the end of this video. I'm going to have such a hard time editing this because it's very long clips. I just spent a very long time talking. I am very excited to be back and I hope that I can stick to it and hang out with you guys some more. We'll see where my channel goes from here. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you all have an amazing day, an amazing week, an amazing year. I would love to know how many books that you read in 2024 and all the things. And I will see you next time I see you. Bye.